SQL Injection Basics. Have you ever wondered what exactly happens when you type your username and password on a web page and click Login? The user input username and password is sent as an HTTP request to the web server, which hands over this request to the web application server that generates an SQL query to check the equality of the user by fetching the data from the database. But the question is, what is SQL and database? SQL, Structured Query Language, is the query that functions to fetch and access the data from the database. A database is a collection of data, arranged intelligently in terms of tables, with rows and columns similar to an Excel sheet. Rows are also called tuples or records, and columns are called fields or attributes. The combination of rows and columns is known as tables. The database server holds an information database called information_schema to store details such as the databases, tables, columns, views, and procedures on the server. For example, if there are two user databases, namely infisec and test, the information schema consists of read-only tables pertaining to infisec and test to hold the details of their structure, that is, the tables and their columns in the database. Information_schema.tables holds the details of all the tables in a database. Information_schema.columns holds the details pertaining to all the columns of tables in a database. The details of specific tables and databases can be accessed using table_name and tables_schema, respectively. Generally, these values in the tables are stored as hexadecimal values. Let us take a look at the query that gets formed when the web application receives a request. Based on the user input, the query gets modified as follows. Upon receiving the request, the database server checks for the combination of the username and password in the table users that resides inside the database infisec. When the data is incorrect, it throws login failed as a response. When the data is correct, the requested data, that is, the account details of the user, is fetched as the response. This page in the web application allows the user to perform operations on the table. By clicking on the search button, the user details can be viewed. When an input, say 31413, and Chennai is given, it generates a request that gets forwarded to a web application server to generate the following query. This now fetches the list of usernames from the table users, whose contact number is 31413 and city is Chennai. In a select statement, the relevant data is fetched using either AND or OR logical operators. AND operator fetches a record only when both the conditions in an SQL query are true. For example, when an AND operator is used in this select statement, it fetches records of users who have both given contact number and the city as that of the user input. On the other hand, OR operator fetches a record if either the first condition or the second condition is true. In the same example, when an OR operator is used in this select statement, it fetches records of users who have either given the contact number or the city as that of the user input. This is how a select statement works. The result is now forwarded to the web app server, which sends it to the web server that delivers it to the client. The next button on the web application allows the user to delete a given record. Take, for example, when the user clicks on Delete and clicks on Confirm, it forms the query as shown. This deletes the entire record of the user whose ID in the database is 1. The next is the drop query. This action is allowed only for users with high privileges, and the query formed is of this form, which deletes the entire structure of the table users, along with the records in the table. Drop query and delete query does the same job of deletion. The only difference between them is that drop query deletes the entire table, while delete query deletes only the records in a table. This is how a delete and drop query work. The result of this query is now forwarded to the web app server, which sends it to the web server that delivers it to the client. View Account Details button allows the user to view all their account details. When a user clicks on this button, a query of this form is generated. The entire account details of a user can include details such as first name, last name, contact details, account, category, etc., which are maintained on different tables. Here, the details such as contact and city are located under table Users, and details such as account and account category are located under the table user_info. In such a scenario, the union command allows obtaining a result set from different tables by combining two select statements with a condition that the number of columns selected in both the statements is the same. This is how a union command works. This command now retrieves the contact and city from the table users pertaining to user ID 1, along with the account and category from the table user_info, whose ID is also 1. The result is now forwarded to the web app server, which sends it to the web server that delivers the result to the client. This is how the web application processes the human understandable user input to generate machine understandable SQL query for responding to user requests. SQL injection. Instead of a human understandable input when an SQL query is injected to exploit the web application, either to breach the authentication system or to fetch unauthorized information from the database, it is called SQL injection.